Perfect. And so that takes us to our next fight. We got a nice lightweight bout between Drakkar Klose and Luis Pena. And
I
man,
feel
I
like
gotta
this fight's
say,
gonna move up on the card because
it
frankly,
has to. It
because
has
it's
to.
so recent, it just seems like how is Drakkar Klose going to be fighting,
The
as the
second fight.
second fight on the entire card? There's just I don't see that happening.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I'm really excited about this one. We've been wanting to watch Klose for a while. And on the other side, we got Luis Pena, who I could not think of a more accurate nickname for this man as, Violent Bob Ross is exactly what I pictured when I saw his picture. I did not see Luis Pena there. So.
Right.
We got Klose on one end coming in 11-2-1 record. He's actually been around the UFC since 2017, which is pretty nuts, man. He just doesn't fight that often, but he did have his tough 25 finale against Marc Diakiese, and that was handing Marc his first loss as well. Since then he has gone 3-2 in the UFC. But if you look at some of those wins, man, Bobby Green, Christos Giagos, Lando Vanatta.
Well, the big thing's the losses,
there.
right? Like, look at the losses.
Yeah.
Like David Teymur, like this guy's a huge kickboxer in the UFC, and I would honestly say, if you look at his record, he's just the guy that we don't see as often. But when it comes to footwork, when it comes to landing big shots, and maybe not all the power behind it, but all that technique, like the guy can really fight. He's one of those exciting guys, and so that loss is very respectable. Then we just saw Beneil Dariush go to work for the second time against our boy.
We just saw him dominate this past Saturday.
He's been on Terminator level, so I mean that loss right there for getting hit with that overhand. I mean, it happened to a lot of people over the course of that reign. So I mean, let's be real, that's a good fight.
Yeah, for sure. Like we said, man, those 5 bouts in the UFC have all been incredible. Maybe that's the reason why in 4 years he's taken 5 fights. But looking forward to seeing him take on Luis Pena this upcoming weekend. And like we said, on the flip side, we got Bob Ross. He also won his TUF 27 finale back in 2018. But he's been in the UFC for a while, since 2018 as well, and has gone 3-3 in the UFC since. So he's gonna be looking forward to getting back on track as well. We saw him defeat Steve Garcia via decision. We did see him lose to Khama Worthy in 2020. Maybe you want to touch on that one a little bit. I believe that was a guillotine choke.
Well, Khama's basically the guy that's just taking down a lot of these prospects. Right? We just talked about his boy, who he basically knocked out, Trevin Jones, who just kind of had a injury/win versus Justin James, who actually has long history with Drakkar Klose. That was one of the fights that he actually really wanted to get in the UFC based on their childhood history. So if you haven't looked at our interview of Justin James, I mean, he brings up a really cool story with Drakkar there. So I mean, it's just really cool to see, Pena from the TUF season we talked about. That was from the card that we saw in Vegas. So a lot of the guys that we saw in Vegas are going to be fighting on this card. Trezana was supposed to fight. Same thing, right? So unfortunately, we don't get to see him. But again, I think these are the kind of guys that seem to want to take that next step. But Pena, short notice, probably kind of guy that's staying in camp as much as he can to get these kinds of calls, and it lines up with his original schedule if you think about it. So I'm really excited for this one, and I think it's going to be maybe less of a short notice fight than people think, because I think Pena is going to come in there ready to game, but Drakkar Klose is a different beast.
So question for you. I mean, I haven't seen Bob Ross fight too much, but one thing that stands out to me is a 6-inch height advantage, 5-inch reach advantage. How much do you think that's going to come into play for this one?
Yeah, so he does actually fight long as well, right? So he's going to try to pepper you with shots. Like the most power, definitely not. And I mean, even I think he's going to be a good volume guy from the distance, but like accuracy wise, he might be trying to play with them. That's where I think Drakkar Klose's athleticism comes into play a bit. Smaller fighter, sure, but I mean, think about what we could have seen from a guy like, Cody Stamann or Jimmy Rivera last week, or actually Jimmy Rivera this coming or pay-per-view and then Stamann the previous week. But they fight very similarly, right? They keep it in close. They can move really well. And I think Drakkar Klose's footwork, his ability to wrestle, all that kind of stuff is going to be able to really play into his strengths, because I think from top position, how powerful he is, you eliminate that length no matter what. And I think Pena is going to be very active from his back. I think he's going to have the ability to kind of work in some reversals and see if he can do some transitions on the ground there and get himself back to the feet. But I think he wants to avoid, staying against the fence and the clinch work. I think, if he hasn't been improving, especially from a striking perspective, that's the way to kind of, attack the legs, slow him down a little bit. Maybe this is a fight you can kind of seal in those second, third rounds if you avoid maybe his best, work from a striking perspective in the first round. A lot of quick feet, utilizing that body movement to land some power shots or even get some takedowns. I think you're going to see a very excited and a very active Drakkar Klose in the first round. But how that plays out, versus a guy like Pena, who's always game and can take some shots. I think he can take shots, but it's going to be a really, really athletic fight, and he has to be ready for that.
Yeah, for sure. And so, like we said earlier, these are 2 fights that were announced like 30 minutes before we started doing this. So, no lines available for this yet. These are the only 2 fights we don't have lines for. So, best educated guess here?
Yeah, so like I said, I think this is going to be a very minimal version of a short notice fight. I think both these guys are going to come in very ready. I do think that Drakkar Klose is going to get the edge. His losses are very, very respectable. And so, I actually do have him somewhere between that minus 250 and minus 350 range. So I will give him I will have him at a minus 280. I think that's a very comfortable line for me.
Yeah, and I gotta agree with it. I expected Klose to be a pretty decent sized favorite. So, we'll make sure we tune in for that one and lock in our final picks if the line jumps out to us. But on initial guess, we're gonna put Klose around minus 250.
I think that's fairly respectable, especially given the fact that, like we talked about footwork, athleticism, short notice, like he should deserve some edge there.
Yeah, for sure. And a dude who's just been itching to get back in there.
And Pena maybe in the same boat, right? And his losses, like we said, Trezano, split decision. Like, this is such a weird little MMA web, and we talked about it once before. Remember the scheduling and how it really is kind of cool how some of these guys end up having history together because of how much, based on suspension, damage you take. If these guys are all coming back at the same time, they technically get the chance to fight, pretty much the same time.
Absolutely. Safe to say we are pumped for this one. UFC Vegas 19 takes place next Saturday, headlined by our boy, the Black Beast, taking on Curtis Blades. We got a bunch of beauty heavyweight fights on that card, so I'm super pumped for it. That wraps it up today. If you haven't already done so, smash that like button, hit that bell button, give us that subscribe, the follow. All our Instagram, Twitter is all there. Any questions, comments you guys have, just send them our way. Anything else, Siraj?
Just be ready. Like, we keep pumping this fight up, but be ready for a 5-round wrestling match where Curtis Blades isn't able to finish this man and Derrick Lewis isn't able to get off his back after 3 rounds, and you're just watching a guy get taken down for 5 rounds. So just be ready for that as well.
Nice little disclaimer there, my man. Always a pleasure, dude. Take care.
You too, my guy. Take care.